Hey everybody, this is Ray, and today we will be continuing our video series on Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility. In this installment, we will be covering Chapter 7, Racial Triggers for White People. Racial trigger, I think that might be a new word for us. So if you're white, grab a blankie, because you're going to need it, because you're about to get triggered here. Now, this is actually one of the shortest chapters in the book, and it's also important for really just one reason, and that is we get to finally learn why Robin DiAngelo is the way that she is. So if you've ever seen that episode of The Office where Michael Scott says to Toby, "Why are you the way that you are?" That is basically the answer to that question. Is basically the purpose of this chapter. So let's just go through some quotes here. When ideologies such as colorblindness, meritocracy, and individualism are challenged, intense emotional reactions are common. So again, she is railing against individualism and meritocracy. These are two components of capitalism. So she's laying on the Marxists some more here. So here are some taboos that that cause racial triggering for white people. Talking openly about race. The racist equal bad, not racist equal good binary. So that was chapter 5. This is her insistence that if you're racist, that doesn't make you a bad person. And by the way, you are racist. So these are some of her things that trigger. Oh, yeah, internalized superiority and a sense of a right to rule. She believes that white people have that. Most white people have limited information about what racism is and how it works. Again, this is where she assumes her definition of racism is correct and yours is not. Therefore, because you do not have her definition or her training, you do not have the special knowledge on racism that she has. This is a Gnostic argument. And then she talks about how white people use racially coded language, and this includes urban, inner city, and disadvantaged. But white people rarely use the term white or overadvantaged or privileged. Now, people don't really say overadvantaged in a sentence, generally speaking. Privileged, again, that involves the Marxist conception of privilege. And most white people aren't Marxist. And by the way, most black people aren't either. So now she's going into excuses that white people have to say that they already know about racism. Is like, already had a class on this, already know this. All these responses constitute white fragility. So it doesn't matter if this is true or not. You're being fragile white man. So here it is. I was a full adult, a parent, and a college graduate before I ever experienced a challenge to my racial identity or position. And that experience was only because I had taken a position as a diversity trainer. When you combine this rarity with my lifetime of racial centrality, I think that's a new word for us, internalized superiority, sense of myself as a unique individual, and expectation for racial comfort that our culture engenders, I simply never had been called upon to build my capacity to endure racial stress. So that's a big mouthful there, but that paragraph basically explains her conversion story. And the language of this book only gets more religious from here. So this is the conversion story of Robin DiAngelo. She was basically normal, probably a little bit of a lefty, And then she took a job as a diversity trainer. She took a job, and now her worldview is changed indefinitely. So she would not be writing this book if she never got that job. She would never she wouldn't have come up with the concept of white fragility if she had not encountered white people who didn't care what she had to say as a diversity trainer. This, once again, the author is very full of herself. I guess my comment here was like, Hitler started out as an artist. Had he been accepted as an artist, how much different would the world be? And that's kind of like what I'm thinking here is like, wow, how much different would her life be if she did not take that position as a diversity trainer? And you kind of wonder, because that's the conversion story for her life. That is the defining moment that changed her life, was being hired for a job. And then she internalized that job. Because, as I said a couple chapters ago, her job was to find racism. If there is no racism, there is no demand for her job. So she needs to find racism. And that means fudging some numbers. So now we, alright, so now she's talking about the custodian is more likely a person of color and the receptionist is more likely white. So now she's talking about how white people have certain jobs, black people have certain jobs. Now, I have last time I, had a receptionist where I worked, the receptionist was a black lesbian. So, she's wrong there. I don't know about the cleaning people. So I guess when this is not upheld, these stereotypes as she sees it, or she calls it a habitus, there is disequilibrium. So again, she believes that white people expect black people to have certain jobs and white people to have certain jobs. This is how she thinks. So then there's racial equilibrium. I think this is a new word for us. I can't keep track of the new terms, so I apologize if this is a repeat. These interruptions. So racial stress results from an interruption to the racially familiar. These interruptions can take a variety of forms and come from a range of sources, including suggesting that a white person's viewpoint comes from a racialized frame of reference. It challenged objectivity. Once again, postmodernism. So basically, postmodernism, she says that postmodernism creates racial stress. Now, I disagree. I think postmodernism is just a stupid philosophy. It is a completely incorrect worldview. People of color being unwilling to tell their stories or answer questions about their racial experience. Challenge to the expectation that people of color will serve us. I don't have that expectation. I don't know where she's getting that from. Being presented with a person of color in leadership challenges white authority. I've never really had this problem. Again, she's universalizing her experience onto all white people. Let's see. Okay, so now we're talking about Mr. Roberts. What was his story here? A colleague, white female who... Oh, okay, so there's this teacher who apparently called a black student girl. A female student called her girl. Apparently, he calls boys boys and girls girls. And I mean that as in, he says, "Come here, girl." Like something like that. But I guess he does that to everyone. But apparently, this was seen as racist by one student. And and Robin DiAngelo is saying that all these white teachers are coming to his defense and upholding racism. And talks about how Mr. Roberts, I guess is a teacher's name, they perceived my intervention as a form of punishment. Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? She is the Toby of this office. Dealing with Karen is a punishment. First, because the teacher called all her female students girl, the comment had nothing to do with race. So apparently she disagrees with that. Apparently treating everyone the same still has something to do with race. And then she says that not validating this student's offense is a form of racism. Nor did they show concern about the student's feelings. So apparently we got to be sensitive because a student was racially triggered by a teacher's comment. They were unable to separate intentions from impact. So according to her, the emotional impact of what someone says matters more than the intention of what they were trying to say. I mean, this may be true, but at certain times, not everyone's feelings are valid. And I believe that it is a choice to be offended by something. And Mr. Roberts' lack of cross-racial skills and understanding, a lack that led to a racial violation. That is a new term for us. So we got a flag on the play and a 15-yard penalty, all because we have a racial violation on the field. So white fragility may be conceptualized as a response or condition produced and reproduced by the continual social and material advantages of whiteness. When disequilibrium occurs, when there is an interruption to that which is familiar or taken for granted, white fragility restores equilibrium and returns the capital lost via the challenge. So this is, again, we're getting back into the Marxist dynamic here, where social capital shifts from one group to the other. And that's what she's talking about here, that white people must, white fragility is there to maintain the white capital. And again, she sees the world this way, not me and not most people. And that's basically the end of this chapter. Like I said, this was a short chapter, and it's important to knowing Robin DiAngelo's conversion story. Because like I said, this book is only going to get more religious from here. So I'm Ray. Like and comment below. Let me know what you think. And I will see you on the next one.